1 Kings 20. Syria attacks Israel. King Ben-Hadad of Syria called his army together. He was joined by 32 other kings with their horses and chariots. And together they marched to Samaria and attacked. Ben-Hadad sent a messenger to tell King Ahab of Israel, "Ahab, give me your silver and gold, your wives and your youngest sons." "Your Majesty," Ahab replied, "everything I have is yours, including me." Later, Ben-Hadad sent another messenger to say to Ahab, "I already told you to give me your silver and gold, your wives and your children. But tomorrow at this time I will send my officers into your city to search your palace and the houses of your officers. They will take everything else that you own." Ahab called a meeting with the leaders of Israel and said, "Ben-Hadad is causing real trouble. He told me to give him my wives and children, as well as my silver and gold, and I agreed." "Don't listen to him," they answered. "You don't have to do what he says." So Ahab sent someone to tell Ben-Hadad, "Your Majesty, I will give you my silver and gold and even my wives and children, but I won't let you have anything else." When Ben-Hadad got his answer, he replied, "I'll completely destroy Samaria. There won't even be enough of it left for my soldiers to carry back in their hands. If I don't do it, I pray that the gods will punish me terribly." Ahab then answered, "Ben-Hadad, don't brag before the fighting even begins. Wait and see if you live through it." Meanwhile, Ben-Hadad and the other kings had been drinking in their tents. But when Ahab's reply came, he ordered his soldiers to prepare to attack Samaria, and they all got ready. At that very moment, a prophet ran up to Ahab and said, "You can see that Ben-Hadad's army is very strong, but the Lord has promised to help you defeat them today. Then you will know that the Lord is in control. Who will fight the battle?" Ahab asked. The prophet answered, "The young bodyguard who served the district officers." "But who will lead them into battle?" Ahab asked. "You will," the prophet replied. So Ahab called together the 232 young soldiers and 7,000 troops in Israel's army, and he got them ready to fight the Syrians. Israel defeated the Syrians. At noon, King Ahab and his Israeli army marched out of Samaria with the young soldiers in front. King Ben-Hadad of Syria and the 32 kings with him were drunk when the scout he had sent out ran up to his tent, shouting, "We just now saw soldiers marching out of Samaria. Take them alive." Ben-Hadad adult, "I don't care if they have come out to fight or to surrender." The young soldiers led Israel's troops into battle, and each of them attacked and killed an enemy soldier. The rest of the Syrian army turned and ran, and the Israelites went after them. Ben-Hadad and some others escaped on horses. But Ahab and his soldiers followed them and captured their horses and chariots. Ahab and Israel's army crushed the Syrians. Later, the prophet went back and warned Ahab, Ben-Hadad will attack you again next spring. Build up your troops and make sure you have some good plans. Syria attacks Israel again. Meanwhile, Ben-Hadad officers went to him and explained, Israel's gods are mountain gods. We fought Israel's army in the hills, and that's why they defeated us. But if we fight them on flat land, there's no way we can lose. Here's what you should do. First, get rid of those 32 kings and put army commanders in their place. Then get more soldiers, horses, and chariots, so your army will be as strong as it was before. We'll fight Israel's army on flat land and wipe them out. Ben-Hadad agreed and did what they suggested. In the spring, Ben-Hadad got his army together and they marched to the town of Aphek to attack Israel. The Israelites also prepared to fight. They marched out to meet the Syrians, and two armies camped across from each other. The Syrians covered the whole area, but the Israelites looked like two little flocks of goats. The prophet went to Ahab and said, the Syrians think the Lord is God of the hill and not of the valleys. So he has promised to help you defeat their powerful army. Then you will know that the Lord is in control. For 7 days, the two armies stayed in their camps, facing each other. Then, on the 7th day, the fighting broke out, and before sunset, the Israelites had killed 10,000 Syrian troops. The rest of the Syrian army ran back to Aphek, but the town wall failed to crush 27,000 of them. Ben-Hadad also escaped Aphek and hid in the back room of the house. His officers said, Your Majesty, we've heard that Israel's kings keep their agreement. We'll wrap sackcloth around our waist, put ropes around our head, and ask Ahab to let you live. They dressed in sackcloth and put ropes on their heads. Then they went to Ahab and said, Your servant Ben-Hadad asked you to let him live. Is he still alive? Ahab asked. Ben-Hadad is like a brother to me. Ben-Hadad's officers were trying to figure out what Ahab was thinking. And when he said, Brother, they quickly replied, You are right. You and Ben-Hadad are like brothers. Go get him. Ahab said. When Ben-Hadad came out, Ahab had him climb up into his chariot. Ben-Hadad said, I will give back the towns my father took from your father. And you can have shops in Damascus, just as my father had in Samaria. Ahab replied, "If you do these things, I will let you go free." Then they signed a peace treaty, and Ahab let Ben-Hadad go. The prophet condemns Ahab. About this time, the Lord commanded the prophet to say to your friend, "Heed me." But the friend refused. And the prophet told him, "You disobey the Lord, and as soon as you walk away, a lion will kill you." The friends laughed, and suddenly a lion killed him. The prophet found someone else and said, "Heed me." So this man beat him up. The prophet laughed and put a bandage over his face to disguise himself. Then he went and stood beside the Lord, waiting for Ahab to pass by. When Ahab went by, the prophet shouted, "Your Majesty, right in the heat of battle, someone brought a prisoner to me and told me to guard him. He said if the prisoner got away, I would either be killed or forced to pay 3,000 pieces of silver. But I got busy doing other things, and the prisoner escaped." Ahab answered, "You will be punished just as you have said." The man quickly tore the bandage off his face, and Ahab saw that he was one of the prophets. The prophet said, "The Lord told you to kill Ben-Hadad, but you let him go. Now you will die in his place, and your people will die in place of his people." Ahab went back to Samaria, angry and distressed. 1 Kings 21. Jezebel has Naboth killed. Naboth owned a vineyard in Jezebel near King Ahab's palace. One day Ahab said, "Naboth, your vineyard is near my palace. Give it to me so I can turn it into a vegetable garden. I'll give you a better vineyard or pay whatever you want for yours." Naboth answered, "This vineyard has always been in my family. I won't let you have it." So Ahab went home, angry and distressed because of what Naboth has told him. He lay on his bed, just staring at the wall and refusing to eat a thing. Jezebel, his wife, came in and asked, "What's wrong? Why won't you eat?" "I asked Naboth to sell me his vineyard or to let me give him a better one," Ahab replied, and he told me I couldn't have it." "Aren't you the king of Israel?" Jezebel asked. "Get out of bed and eat something. Don't worry. I'll get Naboth's vineyard for you." Jezebel wrote a letter to each of the leader of the town where Naboth lived. In the letters she said, "Call everyone together and tell them to go without eating today. When they come together, give Naboth a seat at the front. Get 2 liars to sit facing him and swear that Naboth has cursed God and the king. Then take Naboth outside and stone him to death." She signed Ahab's name to the letters and sealed them with his seal. Then she sent them to the town leaders. After receiving her letters, they did exactly what she had asked. They told the people that it was a day to go without eating, and when they all came together, they seated Naboth at the front. The two liars came in and sit across both Naboth. Then they accused him of cursing God and the king. So the people dragged Naboth outside and stoned him to death. The leaders of Jezreel sent a message back to Isabel that said Naboth is dead. As soon as Isabel got their message, she told Ahab, "Now you can have the vineyard." Naboth refused to sell his dad. Ahab got up and went to take over the vineyard. Elijah condemned Ahab. The Lord said to Elijah the prophet, "King Ahab of Israel is in Naboth's vineyard right now, taking it over. Go tell him that I say, Ahab, you murdered Naboth and took his property. And so in the very spot where dogs licked of Naboth's blood, they will lick of your blood." When Elijah found him, Ahab said, "So my enemy, you found me at last." Elijah answered, "Yes, I did, Ahab. You have managed to do everything the Lord hates. Now you will be punished. You and every man and boy in your family will die, whether slave or free. Your whole family will be wiped out, just like the family of King Jeroboam and King Baasa. You made the Lord very angry by sinning and causing the Israelites to sin. And as for Isabel, dogs will eat her body there in Jezreel. Those will also eat the bodies of your relatives who die in town. The vultures will eat the bodies of those who die in the country." When Ahab heard that, he tore his clothes in sorrow and wore sackcloth day and night. He was depressed and refused to eat. Sometime later, the Lord said, "Elijah, do you see how sorry Ahab is for what he did? I won't punish his family while he is still alive. I'll wait until his son is king." No one was more determined than Ahab to disobey the Lord, and Isabel encouraged him. Worst of all, he had worshipped idols, just as the Amorites had done before the Lord forced them out of the land and gave it to Israel. 1 Kings 12:2. Micaiah warns Ahab about disaster. For the next 3 years, there was peace between Israel and Syria. During the 3rd year, King Jehoshaphat of Judah went to visit King Ahab of Israel. Ahab asked his officers, "Why haven't we tried to get Ramoth in Gilead back from the Syrians? It belongs to us." Then he asked Jehoshaphat, "Would you go to Ramoth with me and attack the Syrians? Just tell me what to do." Jehoshaphat answered, "My army and horses are at your command. But first, let's ask the Lord." Ahab sent for about 400 prophets and asked, "Should I attack the Syrians at Ramoth?" "Yes," the prophets answered. the Lord will help you defeat them. But Jehoshaphat said, just to make sure, if there are another of the Lord prophets we could ask Micaiah, son of Imlah. Ahab said, but I hate Micaiah. He always has bad news for me. Don't say that. Jehoshaphat replied. Then Ahab sent someone to bring Micaiah as soon as possible. All this time, Ahab and Jehoshaphat were dressed in their royal robes and were seated on their thrones at the threshing place near the gate of Samaria. They were listening to the prophets tell them what the Lord had said. Zedekiah, son of Kenana, was one of the prophets. He had made some horns out of iron and shouted, Ahab, the Lord says, you will attack the Syrians like a bull with iron horns and wipe them out. All the prophets agreed that Ahab should attack the Syrians at Ramoth, and they promised that the Lord would help him defeat them. Meanwhile, the messenger who went to get Micaiah whispered, Micaiah, all the prophets have good news for Ahab. Now go and say the same thing. I will say whatever the living Lord tell me to say. Micaiah replied. Then Micaiah went to Ahab, and Ahab asked, Micaiah, should I attack the Syrian at Ramoth? Yes. Micaiah answered, the Lord will help you defeat them. Micaiah, I've told you over and over to tell me the truth. Ahab shouted, what does the Lord really say? He answered, in a vision I saw Israelite soldiers walking around in the hills like sheep without a shepherd to guide them. The Lord said, this army has no leader. They should go home and not fight. Ahab turned to Jehoshaphat and said, I told you he would bring bad news. Micaiah replied, listen to this. I also saw the Lord seated on his throne with every creature in heaven gathered around him. The Lord asked, who can trigger Ahab and make him go to Ramoth where he will be killed? They talked about it for a while. Then finally a script came forward and said to the Lord, I can trigger Ahab. How? The Lord asked. I will make Ahab's prophet light to him. Good, the Lord replied. Now go and do it. This is exactly what has happened. Ahab, the Lord made all your prophets lie to you, and he knows you will soon be destroyed. Zedekiah walked up to Micaiah and slapped him on the face. Then he asked, do you really think the Lord would speak to you and not to me? Micaiah answered, you'll find out on the day. You have to hide in the back room of some house. Ahab shouted, arrest Micaiah. Take him to Prince Joseph and Governor Ammon of Samaria. Tell them to put him in prison and to give him nothing but bread and water until I come back safely. Micaiah said, if we do come back, I was wrong about what the Lord wanted me to say. Then he told the crowd, "Don't forget what I said. Ahab dies at Ramos. Ahab and Jehoshaphat led their armies to Ramos in Gilead. Before they went into battle, Ahab said, 'Jehoshaphat, I will disguise myself with your loyal love.' Then Ahab disguised himself and went into battle. The king of Syria had ordered his 32 chariot commanders to attack on Ahab. So when they saw Jehoshaphat in his love, they thought he was Ahab and started to attack him. But when Jehoshaphat shouted out to them, they realized he wasn't Ahab, and they left him alone. However, during the fight, a soldier shot an arrow without even aiming, and it hit Ahab where two pieces of his armor joined. He shouted to his chariot driver, "I've been hit. Get me out of here." The fighting lasted all day, with Ahab propped up in his chariot so he could see the Syrian troops. He bragged so much that the bottom of the carriage was covered with blood, and by evening he was dead. As the sun was going down, someone in Israel's army shouted to the others, "Retreat, go back home." Ahab's body was taken to Samaria and buried there. Some workers washed his chariot near a spring in Samaria, and prostitutes washed themselves in his blood. Dogs licked Ahab's blood off the ground, just as the Lord had warned. Everything else Ahab did while he was king, including the towns he strengthened and the palace he built and furnished with ivory, is written in the history of the kings of Israel. Ahab died, and his son Ahaziah became king. King Jehoshaphat of Judah. Jehoshaphat, son of Asa, became king of Judah in Ahab's fourth year as king of Israel. Jehoshaphat was 35 years old when he became king, and he ruled from Jerusalem for 25 years. His mother was Ajubah, daughter of Silhi. Jehoshaphat obeyed the Lord just as his father Asa had done, and during his rule he was at peace with the king of Israel. He got rid of the rest of the prostitutes from the local shrines, but he did not destroy the shrines, and they were still used as palace for offering sacrifices. Everything else Jehoshaphat did while he was king, including his brave deeds and military victories, is written in the history of the king of Judah. The country of Edom had no king at the time, so a loyal official ruled the land. Jehoshaphat had seagoing ships built to sail to Ophir for gold, but they were wrecked at Ezion Jaber and never sailed. Ahaziah, son of Ahab, offered to let his sailor go with Jehoshaphat's sailors, but Jehoshaphat refused. Jehoshaphat died and was buried beside his ancestors in Jerusalem, and his king Jehoram became king. King Ahaziah of Israel. Ahaziah, son of Ahab, became king of Israel in the 17th year of Jehoshaphat's rule in Judah, and he ruled 2 years for Samaria. Ahaziah disobeyed the Lord just as his father, his mother, and Jeroboam had done. They all led Israel to sin. Ahaziah worshipped Baal and made the Lord God of Israel very angry, just as his father had done.